I am comic book and comic book nation host Kofi Outlaw, and today I'm proud to be joined by someone I would say is probably one of the only people in this industry I would say like old friend for, but old
Yeah.
friend and one of a kind, the founder and creative director of the Bootleg Universe, Shankar Animation, 1984 private defense contractor, production, so much it expands. I feel like every time we talk to each other since we first met each other on a New York Comic Con stage many moons ago. But if you don't know who I'm talking about today, I am here with Adi Shankar.
Dude, we are friends. This is the truth.
Yeah,
This
we
is
go.
the truth.
Yeah, we were both trying to just get through this industry in the 2010s. We were just some renegade kids with some renegade ideas. You were out just making things better than the big studios were with the Bootleg Universe ideas, with Power Rangers, Venom, Truth and Journalism, like so much stuff that has now become that have almost all across the board become big IPs since you started kind of playing with them and stoking the imagination. And look where we are now today. Your name is known all over Netflix right now. I think the last time we talked was Guardians of Justice, and now
Mhm.
since then you've had Castlevania blow up. I just got done covering Castlevania Nocturne, the kind of spin-off series from your main Castlevania series. Captain Laserhawk is out right now. The gaming, animation community is all a buzz about seeing Devil May Cry, which is in development. You've got so much going on and have had so much going on since we've started talking. I'm just interested to feel like, just to start with, how you doing right now? I mean, this has been kind of a crazy week since we started even just planning this interview. Like, so much has happened. The strike is over. There's Marvel's going crazy. Like, so much is going on, and yet here you are in the kind of the midst, and you've just been steadily building and building and building. So, what are things like for you these days?
I feel like I've gotten better at talking.
Oh yeah, there's no. Well, I mean, to be fair, I still tell the story about how we were just put in like an empty room near the end of New York Comic Con one night, and you just started talking, and it was just like the assignment was just like let you go in free flow for like as long as you wanted to, and by the end, we had packed a fair amount of that room with people like who had just come and heard you talking,
That
started hearing the ideas, and
yeah,
we're just coming to sit down and be like, I want to listen to
that was
more from this guy. And
that
so
was
I don't know,
crazy.
man.
That was
Yeah, you've
crazy.
been
That was crazy. That was a crazy day. So that was 10 years ago.
yeah.
That was 10 years ago. 9 years ago, actually. That was 9 years ago. And that was a crazy experience. So I'm just gonna kind of recount this story because it was nuts. New York Comic Con, they said, okay, we're just gonna give you the room, we're gonna give you the floor. You're gonna just go, just start talking, right? And Kevin Smith actually put this idea, he incepted this idea in my head like a couple years before we did this. He's like, hey, you can do what I do. You can go on stage and talk to people. You say interesting things. And I'm like, are you sure? Oh, okay. Let me try it for the first time at New York Comic Con. Because that's not low pressure. Uh, that's not high pressure. So so we're there. It's you, it's me, it's Rob, um, Rob Freppier.
Yeah, yeah.
We're on stage, we're talking, and in my mind, I'm like, oh, I want to be a comedian, so I'm gonna say funny shit. I'm gonna try to be funny. But like no one's laughing. But people just keep coming in, but like no one's laughing. So I literally think I'm bombing. In my mind, I'm like, I'm bombing. People keep coming into this room, but no one's laughing. And I keep talking, and then finally I stop and I go, is this funny? And there's like silence. There's like silence. And then one dude, like an older gentleman, goes, uh, this is what you're saying is fascinating. You don't need to be funny. And I'm like, whoa, that was crazy. Because to me, at that point in time, I like kind of really valued humor. And I valued, from just having a childhood where we were moving every few months, few years to completely different countries, different cities, different countries, whether it was Mumbai to China, India to China to Singapore, all over India, Middle East. So I was always entering these new countries, and the way I made friends was through humor. I'd walk, and so to me, I really valued making people laugh. Right? It was how I created a sense of safety, a sense of belonging. And now I'm in front of this crowd for the first time I've ever done this, and realizing feeling like I'm bombing at this comedy set, only to realize that like no one is looking for me to make them laugh. They're like, no, just keep talking about the things you're talking about, dude. And that would not have happened without you, dude.
Oh, thank you. I was going to more give you praise because I was going to say we were in there for a while, so I don't have like the audio from that. But just from our last interview about Guardians, you said so many things that like I now keep pointing to people, and I'm like, see what Adi said, like when you even just mentioned in our last interview, like Cody Rhodes and how he would be great in a WWE future. And then like months later, it's like this whole thing just explodes. And I just looked back at our interview, I was like, oh my gosh, but there was so much you said that night, and why I'm referencing it, that over 10 years has come to pass. You talked about so much stuff, from just, what studios do wrong handling IP and not really connecting it with fans, to what like the nature of the industry would be from what you'd learned from bootleg and what you can do from there, and making your own stuff and stuff like that. And, it's so crazy to see 10 years later. And why I'm asking is like, now we're here in like the things you've done now is just kind of helping to push anime even more mainstream through things like Castlevania, and get, all these different IPs who may not have even considered that format to rethink what that audience is and how to do that. And just how Netflix has obviously kind of just seen you and been like, yeah, this guy, again, same thing, nothing's changed. Keep talking. You're saying interesting things. Keep talking. Like, yeah. What other ideas do you have here? Like, and so, man, it's just wild to see what you've done. I'm kind of, just to kind of segue, what is it that, because I always look at, and there's so many things I would like to ask, like a Kevin Feige, right? Like about who's done like the end game stuff and had these really big things, is like, what is it still exciting you now? So for you, same question, like after everything you've done and all the hurdles you've gotten over, like what is it that is still exciting you now, and like what you're excited about now and in the imminent future? I know you're always very careful. We can't talk about projects and all the secret things you always have in development, but in more kind of just general terms, what is it about that is still exciting you?
Well, I'm still just generally excited that I get to do any of this stuff. And it's literally that, right? So, and then if I were to distill it down into the pieces, I can point to obviously Devil May Cry. There's a video game that's a big IP that everybody knows, where the game company came to me and said, "Hey, can you do your thing and reimagine this and make it cool for the kids?" And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that sounds dope." So, I guess that's a new challenge. Jumping back into live action. I mean, I'm doing animation because I ultimately love the people I'm working with in animation. My executives at Netflix, they're fucking awesome. They're just awesome. But I'm excited about dipping my my essence back into live action again. There's this naughty kid inside me that wants to get away with being naughty and just getting away with things. And that's really that's where that naughty kid is, where the excitement comes from. So as long as I feel like I'm getting away with something, I'm excited. I'm having a great time.
Let's talk about the projects you have on screen right now, or the ones you're involved in. Castlevania Nocturne, another successful kind of real big launch for that franchise. Massive cliffhanger ending that teased something really big to come. What do you know about this next kind of installment of Nocturne? And what is there something exciting that you can tease for us as fans about what's coming down the pike there?
Nope.
No.
There's nothing I can tease. No, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can say other than, yeah, Castlevania Nocturne is on Netflix.
All right. Okay. I tried. Look, Castlevania fans, I tried.
I've gotten really good at dodging questions, just in general.
I know. This is what happens, man. I always start out and then I get media trained, and then it's just like my job somehow gets harder over time. It's
well, like like if you recall, of course you recall because we've been recalling this whole conversation in the most beautiful way. Not that I've been media trained, but like when you go back a decade plus ago, I was in my 20s. I was in a position that people are not normally in their 20s, making or being involved in projects that people normally in their 20s are not involved in, with zero media training, going out and just blurting things out that would become like front page of Reddit. And this would like happen every week. This would happen every week. And the studios at this point in time, like, they weren't really clued into what, social media. I mean, this is kind of pre-social media anyways, but they weren't really clued into like, what is this Reddit thing? How does it work? So I had this like period where there was like free reign to just stay and do with no consequences.
That must, yeah, I mean, those were good times for me too. That's how before they learned, we could get people to say a lot of stuff, and it was a lot of fun. But now everybody's a little bit more savvy, but they make us work for it, and that's okay. We'll figure out this Castlevania Nocturne stuff later. Talk to me about Captain Laserhawk, a project which you have had like all 10 fingers around, kind of getting this birthed and out into the world. What I'm so interested about how you got to this particular IP, get like this particular game. Was there something personal for you from the game, or was this just an opportunity or you could work with?
Well, it's inspired by Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. So it's not really like a particular game as much as it's an amalgamation of Ubisoft's portfolio of intellectual property. One of the reviews said it was all these IPs have been stripped for parts, and then reimagined, and then put into this new world, this new original cyberpunk dystopian universe. So yeah, it just kind of came out of me, dude. At the end of the day, I can kind of concoct a story here, but the truth is, just the core of it all is it just came out of me. Someone asked me yesterday, no, 2 days ago, someone said, "Hey, this feels like your most personal thing. This feels the most you, right?" And I'm like, yes, it is. But I do need to shout out the director, Madila Fad, Bobby Pills, the animation studio. I mean, there's a lot of them in this as well, right? Because I handed over directorial control to them. So this is as much mine as it is theirs. But I was asked 2 days ago, "Hey, this feels like your most personal thing." And I said, yes, but that's just a reaction to where I'm at now. If that makes sense, right? I've grown up. So I've evolved. I've experienced more life. I have a different perspective than I did um, say in 2015, where I'm like, hey, let's give Power Rangers guns and explore how they're essentially child soldiers. They're effective. They're essentially the characters in Blood Diamond, but it's just aliens instead of
No.
the people. Yeah. Um, did I answer your question, Kofi?
No, yeah. No, you did. I mean,
Did
I
I?
even have follow. Yeah. I have follow-ups to that. The first part, I will admit, I got drowned out because there was a big YouTube thing that just sprung up. Netflix is running their Geeked Week whole
Yes.
presentation right now. So I'd
Yeah.
be remiss if I didn't ask you, is there any surprises in this thing that's about to drop so I don't get fired later when I'm like, I was sitting with Addy and there's like something there. Do you have any big surprises in store for us in this
Tomorrow.
geek
Tomorrow.
tomorrow? Okay.
Tomorrow.
Okay. I mean, I could imagine we're getting some Devil May Cry things because, all right. All
Yeah.
right.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Oh boy. I can't wait.
Tomorrow.
I know we got
Tomorrow.
people already on it. I don't have to worry about that. We have a whole
No.
anime
It's
team.
tomorrow. Tomorrow. Yeah. I'm trying to think. It's tomorrow because again, this interview is not going to run today or
No,
tomorrow.
it's gonna
So
run tomorrow. Yeah.
here's so I'll give you a sound bit about the thing that's going to run tomorrow, and basically the core of it is I'm a fan of Devil May Cry. It's just me expressing I'm a fan, and it's crazy to be in charge or shepherding or whatever the terminology is of this franchise.
All right.
And there's a
I
cool
can't.
commercial. Like I look like a badass. I walk into a fucking room. I like put a cartridge into a Nintendo, an NES, and it transforms into a PS2. Um, and I look like a badass. I'm wearing a leather jacket. Like,
Hey, man, it's been a long time since you brought out the leather jacket. Come on now, like
yeah,
we remember the classic. We remember old school
right.
Addy. Yeah,
Well, yeah, the pandemic kind of killed my whole vibe. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like,
We're all
I
different
had
now. Yeah,
Well, I had leather jackets that were like graffitied on and long hair, which were like super unique. Now, after the pandemic, everyone works from home. Like everyone looks like Jay and Silent Bob. Like I see my
oh
friends from
man.
college. I see my friends from college. They're all Jay and Silent Bob all day, every day.
Yeah,
And this sounds like I'm joking. I'm not. Like so many of them went as Jay and Silent Bob for Halloween because it was like low hanging fruit.
you're
So
not
yeah,
wrong. You're
yeah.
not wrong. I mean, I've been working from home since like 2009, so I've learned to get my life together and maintain myself there. But you are not wrong. Yeah, it's all been different since post pandemic, but it's good to hear you're going to be classic Adi Shankar. I can't wait to see this, man. Yeah, our whole anime side is just buzzing for this and to see what you've done with this kind of game property. So talk to me about Devil May Cry, the game. What was it that really spoke to you when you first, because there's infinite, I mean, even when that came out, there are so many action adventure games that were there, but this one really did stand out. But I'm kind of curious for you because you are first and foremost a fan. Like, I don't think anybody who
Yeah,
knows your work ever doesn't understand that. And the core appeal that you have with other fans is they can tell the authenticity of their own fandom in what you do and how
totally,
you see things. So what
totally.
was it about Devil May Cry when you picked it up that made you go wow and like made it really stick for you?
It's just cool. It was just cool. There was something about it that was just cool. And again, I was thinking about this morning. Um, in my 20s, I was super anti-establishment, as is well documented. But I used to go on speaking tours to speak to kids, high school kids, middle school kids, and I would tell them, okay, close your eyes. Okay, take a few breaths. Okay, clear your mind. Okay, I'm going to say a word, Tell me if an image comes to mind. And they'd be like, okay, first word, apple. Everyone would raise their hand, obviously, right? Everyone knows what an apple looks like. Second word, okay. Banana. Okay. Everyone raise their hand. Everyone knows what a banana looks like. Third word. Baseball hat. Okay, everyone raises their hand. They know what a baseball hat looks like. Okay. Fourth word, cool. Cool. Like being cool. And a lot of people would raise their hands. And then I would tell them, okay, open your eyes. Okay. So an apple is a real thing, right? It's a real tangible thing. A banana and a baseball hat, these are real things. Whatever image you have in your mind for what cool is, that is a marketing concept that has been fucking psyoped into you. Because that is not a thing that exists in nature, right? There have been billions of dollars spent to convince you that whatever image is in your head of what cool is, well, that's what cool is. Does that make any sense, or have I fucking
No, I mean,
off?
no, man, I'm a son of philosopher. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, that cool as a concept is non-existent. It's a concept that was created and marketed to us so that we would imitate certain behaviors that require certain lifestyle products that we only can fulfill our sense of cool if we're smoking a cigarette, holding a beer on a beach, with like this bathing suit on with a bunch of driving this car that attracts this thing that comes, all that stuff.
Totally. Or it's the hamster wheel, it's the carrot that's being dangled in front of the rabbit. It's all these things. Now, all of this is a big preamble to say I believe Devil May Cry was authentically cool. It wasn't marketed to be cool. It was just cool. And it is cool. But I remember picking up the first Devil May Cry game for PS2, and I was like, whoa, this is cool. And then you play it, and you're like, whoa, this is fucking cool.
Oh, no. I mean, I remember for me, what it was, I mean, you were way more intelligent in that answer than what I'm going to say is I picked it up and somebody said, I was a fan of anime. I was like, this looks anime-ish. All right, check one. And then something that had never been given to me before was the ability to take on monsters with two big guns. And I was just like, Laura Crofting some monsters. I was like, I've never really thought about that. Because most times I got to kill monsters with a sword, a whip, an axe, the Castlevania-ness of it all.
Sure.
I was like, give me two like shiny chrome guns in the 2000s and let me flip, and I can jump and flip and shoot. Like, yeah, and taking on monsters with big guns and a sword too when I needed to. So it was just that simple. Are we in for some good monster gunfights in this upcoming series?
There are no guns in this series. I'm kidding. I'm fucking with you.
I was like, Adi, I've never had to make a headline that scared me from a conversation with you. But that was just one where I was just like, the gaming and anime people are coming for me. They're going to be at my door. Like, oh, man. Whew, that scared me.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, all I can really say about Devil May Cry, at the end of the day, I'm a fan. It's crazy that I'm in this position as a fan to be the shepherd, to be doing this. And I love this franchise. And it's really cool. Like, it's just cool, and it's cool, and it's organically cool. It's not cool in a way that's like been fucking marketed to be cool. It was just authentically cool without trying to be cool, and that's cool.
Is that an easy thing to capture? Because we just talked about how hard it was to get even people to understand like the concept of cool. So is that a hard essence to capture for you? And like, was that kind of a big challenge with this?
Uh, I think to wait till the show comes out before I answer that.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Because then we can have this conversation when you've seen the show, and because I want your opinion on it, right?
Yeah. No, but I'm always curious about your standards because I know
right,
you're
but
a tough
also
standard.
I am a tough standard, but it's also super uncool to talk about how you're cool. You know what I'm saying? That's the most that is the psyop, right? That is the psyop. That is the we are going to buy a Super Bowl spot to convince you that eating Doritos is like the most badass thing you can do. Spoiler alert, eating Doritos is not badass. It's actually full of like weird chemicals and shit. So you should
Yeah.
not eat Doritos. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not real
Red
food.
anything that has like red 3 and yellow 47 in the ingredients, you should avoid that shit.
Yeah, you're not wrong. In my 40s, I'm trying to stay alive that way.
Yeah.
Let's get to some things that are kind of happening because, like I said, this was a crazy week.
Yeah,
like
crazy.
A real crazy week. And I just love to get your opinion on things.
Yeah. I love talking about things and giving my opinion on things.
We're getting a legend. Let's just go from like the things that I just had to touch on this week. We're getting a Legend of Zelda live action movie. How do you feel about that? Were you a Zelda kid?
Well, we're not getting a Zelda movie. There's a Zelda movie in development.
Yes, that's
those are two different things.
Yeah, I forgot
different things.
So I forgot I'm talking to an extraordinary producer here. Yes, you are correct. It is in development.
It's in development. And, the process of going from development to green light to production to release is a journey. It's a freaking journey, right? Most of the time, in the time I've been doing this, and I'm sorry, like I don't mean to like burst anyone's bubble and just be like a negative Nancy, because I do think it's actually a cause for celebration that Nintendo feels safe enough where they're like doing this now, right? Because there've been years, decades, actually, where they were like, "Whoa, we're not there's like a big stain on our legacy with this this Mario movie that came out. We're not going to do this ever again." Like, so I think there was like corporate trauma there. So it's cool that they now feel safe enough to embark on this. But just to temper people's expectations, things get developed all the time that never make it all the way to release. The amount of things that get announced that they're in development, that with people attached, a director, a writer, a star, that you then go, okay, well, the director fell off, the writer fell off, there's like actually a new writer, there's a new team involved. That shit happens all the time, right? And I can point to countless examples. Like, do you know the movie Source Code?
Yeah.
Jake Gyllenhaal, Duncan Jones directed it, right? So that movie, for instance, that was a spec script. That was a spec script that was sold with Topher Grace attached to star, and a dude named Shane Abyss, as an Australian filmmaker, attached to direct. So I don't know why I just picked that example out of the countless array of examples. But I feel like I'm being a negative Nancy right now.
No, I mean
it's fucking great. It's fucking great. It's fucking great, dude. It's fucking great.
One of the first questions is, I mean, identifying if this will make it is an important question. Did you ever see Miyamoto and Avi Arad partnership as two producers of this project? Was that ever in your bingo card for anything that those two figures would ever kind of get together on a project?
Honestly, the thing is, I don't really pay attention to producers. And this is not a knock against producers or anything. I just don't pay attention to producers.
No, it's fair if you don't.
right? And I don't know why that is. I should probably like talk to someone about it, but I just don't pay attention to producers unless that producer has like a specific brand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know.
Like
I get. Yeah, that does make sense.
unless you're like, oh, like so like okay, as an example, like Jason Blumhouse. Like I was there at the the freaking ground floor. Not we didn't work together, but I was there in the beginning when he first started Blumhouse, right? In fact, there were like three guys that did Paranormal Activity. It was Jason Blum, Oren Peli, and Steven Schneider. And Steven and Jason were Blumhouse. They had a falling out, and then Steven and I partnered and launched our own version of Blumhouse, and we had a deal at E1. You can look this up. This was in 2012. Weird aside, but so when I know if Jason Blum is producing a movie via his Blumhouse banner, right? You know, okay, it's going to have a certain vibe. It's going to be a horror movie, right? It's going to generally be contained because most of his movies cost under $7 million, usually under five. And 70% of the movie is going to take place in one location. So it's not that I'm paying attention to Blumhouse per se, but I know that, hey, if he's attached, it sets an expectation. With most producers, it's just cool. Like, okay, great. I'm that person was able to talk their way into the situation. Great, good job.
I think this one is interesting because it's a director, Wes Ball, who did the Maze Runner movies, which you would think, okay, those are very controlled kind of B movie, kind of good genre movie, safe bets, not too much to produce, make enough money.
Right.
But he did it on, and he was also the guy that 10 years ago, like when Avatar came out, he said that Zelda would be the next great kind of mocap franchise to do, like in that vein. So it's kind of interesting to see that he was the one picked and kind of wonder like what they're going for here. Are they going to go for just cutting a regular kind of Dungeons and Dragons style, like live action B movie adventure, at like action adventure quest epic? Because I was saying there's a lot from the 80s. Like I'm a guy from the Sword and the Sorcerer, Lady Hawk, all those kind of movies back then used to be very popular. Those adventure quest, a little edgy type things. So I could see them doing that, like the 80s. I could also see them doing like trying to make the painted iconic artwork look of Zelda kind of come to life on screen. I could see them doing either or.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's such a blank canvas. It's such a blank canvas. And yeah.
Right.
There's not like a right way or a wrong way to do it. But that said, because Nintendo is co-financing it, it's they are in control of the ship. Ultimately, this will be a Nintendo production, right? And when you look at Sony the studio, they're in a weird spot. They're in a very weird spot as a studio because the last again 10 years have not been kind to Sony. Right? Because when you look at it, when you go back to the 2000s, you had Disney, Warner Brothers, Sony, Paramount, Universal, Fox. Those were the six major studios, and they were all arguably on equal footing, right? Disney wasn't the dominant. Hey, we own all the big brands. Go, where we can. They weren't that, right? And it wasn't, and the world was becoming IP driven, but at the end of the day, the theatrical movie ecosystem was star driven. It was more star driven than anything else, right? And when you look at the stars that Sony had in its stable, Will Smith, Adam Sandler, right? Like Will Smith made most of his movies at Sony. Adam Sandler had a deal at Sony, so Sony was an equal footing with all of the other majors. Um, And then, you cut to, okay, everything becomes IP driven. Well, all right. Sony doesn't really have that corporate synergy with the other business units. That's just kind of how they work. And actually, because if they had corporate synergy, they would have invented the iPod.
Do you ever feel that you
So,
had? Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
It's just based on what you were saying. Do you ever feel that you had kind of an influential hand in the proof of concept, like in Hollywood, that the IP, like the era of the IP, would be big, like could take over from the era of the movie star?
No,
Because with
no, no. I don't. I feel like that was not me at all. I feel like actually that was Wall Street, because the era of the movie star um, started because studios no longer had contract players, right? So all of a sudden, um, actors can work with whomever. They can pick their next project. Basically, a multinational conglomerate, aka a movie studio, is able to go out and market the shit out of Will Smith's face. So now everybody in the fucking planet knows who Will Smith is, right? But they don't own Will Smith, because then Will Smith can, like, next year jump to Warner Brothers or Disney or someone else and work with their competitors. So effectively, what movie studios were doing with movie stars by no longer having them under contract was spending hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide to build brands that they had no control over. So it was natural, once movie studios became owned by conglomerates and started raising lots of capital from Wall Street, that there would be a push to take the risk out of the business, right? Take the risk out of it. How do you take the risk? Well, sequels take the risk out, right? If known IP takes the risk out. How do we predict how does Paramount raise X amount of capital from Wall Street, but then say, okay, but in 5 years we're going to make X amount of dollars, right? Because, well, we're going to release these sequels, and these sequels will do a multiple of the what the original did. So I had no influence over that. That was Wall Street, dude. I was just kind of along for the ride. But going back to the Sony piece, which we were saying, like, Sony is in a more dire situation today because they are not the powerhouse that they were 10, 15 years ago. Don't get me wrong, they're still a major studio, right? And they still control some IP, like Spider-Man, etc. But the fact that Sony, like, did that deal with Marvel, with Disney for Spider-Man, is indicative of kind of where they were in the pecking order as a result of just, bad luck, just shifts in consumer behavior. I mean, even the freaking the hack over the interview, there's still ripple effects from that are affecting Sony. So
it's an interesting thing, though, because Sony has had this struggle, but next year, when we've just found this out in like the last day or so, because the SAG after strike ended, actor strike thing, studios are now scrambling to get to see what their new kind of release slate is. We found out next year is going to be the first year since 2012 that we only have one Marvel movie coming out, no DC movie. So effectively, like, superhero movies kind of in the background next year, except for Sony, who has 3 projects. They have Kraven the Hunter, Madam Web, and if they could finish it and in time that they wanted to, they had Venom 3. I'm kind of curious, with now, how do you feel about the playing field next year? And how will we see a shift next year where superhero movies have for the first time had to take this kind of backseat in a long time, where we see other things kind of spring up and maybe seize that opportunity to gain more mainstream traction or gain the spotlight?
So I would argue that happened this year already, right? I mean, when you look at when people walk away this year, like what exhibitors walk away this year, what were the two movies that they're like, oh, what were the two movies that defined this year? Theatrical movies, Oppenheimer and Barbie.
I mean, yeah, those are pretty much that whole weekend would probably be the kind of biggest eye-opening thing for Hollywood this year.
Right. Like what was the paradigm shift, right? And you could say, okay, well, Top Gun Maverick was also in the year before or the years before Top Gun Maverick, right? So I would argue that superhero movies have been in the background since Endgame came out. And I would also argue, I would add an addendum to that, which is I don't think that a lot of things that are kind of characterized as superhero movies are superhero movies. They're just tentpoles. They're just big budget tentpoles. Because by that logic, you could say, well, Star Wars is kind of a superhero movie because they've got powers and they're, running around doing superheroic things. Indiana Jones kind of is a superhero movie, right? More grounded, but again, like you could take the animatics and the storyboards from Indiana Jones and you could plug and play it into I don't know, a Daredevil movie, and it still kind of works, right? So it's not like superhero movies versus everything else. I feel like there's a mass fragmentation even within the sphere of superhero movies, where and again, Marvel really spearheaded this. But this has been happening in the comics for a long time. Most superhero comics aren't really superhero comics. They've been subverting the superhero comic, or in a lot of cases just shifted into a completely different genre altogether. Right? So yeah. So does that make sense? Like they're just
I get it.
Yeah. So does the superhero movie take a back seat? I think the real question is, does the tent pole, we're going to bet $200 million fucking dollars on this one thing and pray that it makes $1 billion. Does that take a backseat to other kinds of programming? And also an addendum to what I just said is, do theaters come back in a big way? Right? Do theaters come back in a big way, like as a cultural event? And we see glimpses of it, but you and I are of the age where people went to the movie theater every week, and what they did. That's like what they did, right? So in a way, Hollywood is still the theatrical business. They're still kind of programming for a world in which people go to the movie theaters every week, and you have this captive audience that's like, I'm going to the theater with my family. It's a question of what am I going to watch? We'll figure it out when we get there. That is no longer the paradigm we live in, right? The product has to draw the people in.
Yeah, it's more like I think I've been talking about this all year, but there was a paradigm shift where movies became concerts, which is like you now look at even like a long slate, like a year, and you're like, and families will say, "Ooh, these 4 movies are the 4 movies we want to see this year." And so theatrical outings are now becoming like concert outings. Like it's like there are very few people who go, I'm such a music head that I go to a concert every week. It's more like people just pick like the 4 big concerts they want to see a year, and it's kind of like that. And I think that was kind of the telling thing about this summer, because like as you said, the studios still programmed movie releases. If you look at June and July, it's the most telling thing in the world to me this year. It's they program the release of all these movies, and you can see it from like almost a normal citizen's paycheck perspective of like the week separations where there was like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 did really well. Then the next few weeks, we pumped out Fast X. Then we pumped out a Transformers movie. Then we pumped out a Flash movie right after that. And then like none of those did well. At the end of the month was Indiana Jones. Oh, look, that did well. Then right after that in July, it was like we knew that Barbie and Oppenheimer was coming. But before that, we had Mission Impossible 7. First time Mission Impossible has ever really fallen off in the box office. And it was not, I don't think it was Tom Cruise doing anything differently, but it's just like I said, if you just look back at what people had paid for, it's like nobody can hit all of those movies anymore. And people made choices. So in July, after doing, if they did Indiana Jones as a family, they had to make a choice, the Barbie Oppenheimer thing. And so they, you saw Barbie was a crazy cultural event in the theaters for weeks.
Yeah.
5 days a week, 7 days a week, theaters were packed. And so that made money. And so like it was this weird oscillation where it was like literally you could see people's, if you were to frame like movies that made money in the box office versus movies who did in the summer, and when did the average American get their paycheck? Like it's like almost like neck and neck.
100%. And I would add to that what you just said by saying that my big takeaway from all of this is, and this is just my takeaway, right? Other people will have different takeaways. So I'm not saying this is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and this is it. But my takeaway from it is the era of visual effects is over. Right? Because when you look at movies over the last decade, the visual effects spectacle has been one of the big drivers, right? Also sound design, like all these like innovations in technology have really helped the theatrical experience in a way, right? Because all of a sudden, like you're seeing new shots, you're seeing new effects, you're seeing different cuts. Like there was like a technological innovation that I felt, or I feel, was a huge driver for the audience, because you're all of a sudden seeing, oh wow, this is new. I feel like that's winding down if it's not already over, right? I feel like that's winding down. So when you look at the proliferation of sequels, and not just sequels, it's like, hey, this is the sequel, but part 1 of the sequel. Right?
Yeah.
The audience ultimately voted for original shit. Now, I'm sure Mattel's going to go, oh my God, like we need to build our own cinematic universe now with Hot Wheels. And
that's exactly what's happening, actually.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's really what's happening. Yeah.
And that's not going to work, because at the end of the day, Barbie was a filmmaker driven movie. It was a filmmaker driven movie, right? Yeah, there's 100%. There's the IP, but it was a filmmaker driven thing. So yeah, it was a story with a point of view.
Do you feel, I got to wind down here in a little bit, but let's just get a couple questions I know I've had to ask you. Do you feel in a weird way, that scene in Endgame where Thanos is sitting on the battlefield and, the Avengers came up to him and he gives that now famous speech about, you tried to get over everything, but everything led you back here to me. Do you feel like in a weird way you could come full circle with the kind of stuff you did with the early bootleg universe, where you could see some of these studios coming to you and being like, what are some ideas to kind of like really kick some of this superhero stuff back into gear? Like, coming to people like yourself who were so willing to break the mold and just kind of, for lack of a better term, just get weird with it and challenge us with like ideas of where these characters were and how they were presented and depicted. Do you think you, and you didn't
Yeah, for
have
sure.
like all the resources in the world to do that? That's why I asked you
No,
the question about the IP part, because you didn't have all the resources in the world to do
no,
it. You had a
no. I had
love of the
no reason.
IP, the love of the character, and you in a creative idea. And that stuff would go and catch on and go so viral and was so, and is still sometimes referenced. Like people look at the actual studio Power Rangers movie and then they point back to yours and they're like, no, this, not that. Like, you know, it wasn't, and you kind of that whole attitude. So do you think you could see yourself like Thanos with them coming full circle and back to you? Because I'm telling you also, I still want my Dread sequel. I mean, I don't know what we got to do, how many times I got to watch this on Netflix, and I do, how to get them to realize, like, yeah, we need that Dread sequel. There's some ideas, and there was some stuff that they
I
were
mean, I
clued into.
feel like on like I feel like on some level that's kind of already happened, right? The fact that I got to do Captain Laserhawk, for instance, that didn't happen in a vacuum. That happened as a byproduct of the bootleg universe short films. If you don't have the short films, you don't have Captain Laserhawk, and it's just that simple, right? So, um, and you could argue that the combination of intellectual property that has been remixed in Captain Laserhawk um, is just as well known and can rival Craven the Hunter, Morbius, Madame Web, right? I feel like there's more people who know Assassin's Creed today than know who Craven the Hunter, Madame Web, and Morbius combined.
Oh, no doubt. Like, yeah.
Right. So um and Devil May Cry, would argue is a kind of a similar situation because it's a big brand. It's a big brand. I don't look at it that way, right? Because I'm not like doing a spreadsheet analysis on you know, uh, what intellectual property I should tackle next. I'm not doing that. For me, it's completely intuitive, and it's really driven by like, what do I love? But when we just take a big picture view of it, Devil May Cry is a big, big, big intellectual property that 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 I'm thinking. So on some level, I would say, Kofi, that's already happened, right? I think the question you're really asking me is, do the legacy brands hit me up to reinvent their legacy shit? Right? That's kind of what you're asking me.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know. I don't know because so much of this, here's the thing. Everything we know about Hollywood is fundamentally going to change in the next year, right? Um, the Hollywood that I joined in 2008 or 9, the Hollywood that you've been covering for all these years, it's gone. It's over. Something new is about to emerge. Something completely different, right? It's a different business model. It's a different ethos. It's a different type of thing. We've been effectively living in a post Iron Man, post Dark Knight world. Avatar being, maybe like the one exception of an original thing. Um, it's hard to predict what's going to come next. Although, here's what we do know. Of the 100% of things that are made every year, 80% of it is just not watched. 20% of it is getting 100% of the eyeballs, nearly. Um, so, so what does one do with that information? And by one, I don't mean me and you, because we're not in that in that spot, but I'm really talking about Wall Street, because Wall Street has been dictating a lot of this, a lot of the ebbs and flows of Hollywood for the past little bit. The push into streaming, for instance, that was a Wall Street driven phenomena.
Oh, I think some studio execs are starting to figure that out. Yeah. That one was...
Well, I think they figured that out a long time ago, because
no, I was just making a joke.
But the thing is, the studio executives were not playing ball with any of this shift to digital. They were like, no, this is a business apparatus that has been developed over like 100+ fucking years. Like, fuck you, we're not changing it to do this new business model, right? And then it was around like 2018, where all of a sudden, like over the summer of 2018, where everyone suddenly got pressure to shift, and that kicked off the streaming wars. So, and now we're in the, yeah. I feel like I'm just talking endlessly.
No, you're good. These are all, you're answering. This is, I mean, nothing's changed, man. This is how we started, and you're answering every question. I'm asking here, and I'm highly interested to hear your thoughts on this, because again, I feel like you have kind of become weirdly like the prototype for like what Hollywood wishes it can grab now, is somebody who can do things within like a budget range of like 60 to 80, good idea, catches on, knows the kind of ways to do it, to kind of even bridge new formats that, how many executives at these studios know anything about anime? Like, you know what I mean? And like know how to crack into those formats ahead of time, things to get good on social. Like you do a good job of that. And I could just see them like figuring out like, oh yeah, we need more of what you kind of bring to the table and do there. But yeah. So a couple final questions, because I gotta bounce. Did you watch the end of Attack on Titan?
No.
Okay, well then we can skip that. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to spoil anything. And as always, us being Comic Book Nation, is there a big kind of famous legacy franchise, if it's one of the comic ones or anime ones or anything else that you saw, that you know of, that you would kind of be excited to work on today?
The Witcher.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? The Witcher. In all of the responses you would have given, I never would have thought. And that's a universe that has already been kind of, it's multimedia, it's kind of blowing out. What is it about Witcher you like, that you love so much?
I'm basically Geralt.
Okay.
Our timeline, I'm basically Geralt.
All right. And that's a Netflix thing. That's not outside the realm of your possibility. You ever had those conversations?
No, I'm just kind of saying it to you right now, and maybe I'll leave this thing and call someone.
Oh no, yeah, we're definitely going to tell somebody about that. Like, yeah, because I am highly interested on what you would do with the Witcher universe. Yeah.
Do you have any questions on wrestling that you want to ask me?
Right now, I just had to ask today, because we've had such a slowdown in wrestling coverage. Anything for Survivor Series you're interested in, or anything across like what's been happening in wrestling over the last year? Because there's been a lot. Well, no, let me get more personal. How do you feel about the Cody Rhodes situation? Because we started off and we talked about this. Nobody listened to me. I gave them that content from our last interview and I said, print this. Nobody listened to me. They did not print it. And then months later, I came back and was like, you guys, I was like, see what, you should have printed that, because you predicted that, you said Cody Rhodes, major star, would be a huge WWE star. Months later, they kind of flirted with that idea, but kind of dropped the ball at a lot of fans' opinions. How do you feel about that?
So people feel that they dropped the ball with Cody being a major star?
No. That they didn't do enough there, I think.
Like, what more could they have done.
I forget. Listen, I'm not a wrestling expert, so I don't. I am
So,
talking kind of secondhand.
so
I think the storyline for him, because if I remember correctly, did they deny him the belt, or did they kind of steer it a different way?
here's what I'll say about Cody, right? So I get emotionally invested in wrestling sometimes, and it's a little confusing to me, right? So when Cody lost at WrestleMania, I was like, "Whoa, what the fuck?" Because I expected him to win. I think everyone did, right?
Yeah,
Which is actually great storytelling. This is fucking Empire Strikes Back. This is Infinity War. Like you don't expect Thanos to go over and fucking everyone else to get wasted. That's that's the core of storytelling, right? In wrestling, there's more money in the chase than there is um in the baby face being the champion. This is why Ric Flair, as a bad guy in the 70s, held on to the title, for so long. You have some exceptions like Hulk Hogan, being the main good guy, but also being the champion, and that's more the exception than the rule. Historically, in wrestling, the money is in the chase. It's in seeing the good guy try to conquer the villain. Yeah.
yeah.
Um. So but yeah, it was interesting because he like loses, and I was like, "Fuck." I'm gonna text him and be like, "Dude, what the fuck? I can't believe you. That's." And then I was like writing him a text, and then it like dawned on me. I said, "Wait a second. Maybe I should call him." And then I was just like, "Wait a second. What are you doing, dude? Like, this is like texting David Schwimmer and saying, "Bro, I can't believe Rachel fucking broke up with you. This is some bullshit, bro."
R.I.P. Matthew Perry. But yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you
So,
but you were invested. He
so
might have taken it as like as flattery. You're really invested.
yeah. I'm invested, but I think part of the that is part of the magic of wrestling, right? It's blurring the lines between what's real and what's not real. It's using real life emotions um to dramatize them within the context of the squared circle. This is like literally what we set up in Captain Laserhawk episode 3, the Eden Wrestling Federation. It's that, right, where you're dramatizing the the national mood, so to speak. Right? You're dramatizing the national mood. That is wrestling. So dude, I was in LA. There was billboards all over the city with Cody's face on it. Like he was in the main event of Wrestle fucking Mania, right? Like there's more money in the chase.
All right. All right. That's a good
Right?
yeah. Last question, just out of curiosity. What's been your favorite thing to watch this year?
Other than Captain Laserhawk,
Yeah, I mean, yes, obviously,
other,
other than Captain Laserhawk.
I watch Captain Laserhawk every day. I'm just kidding. Okay, other than Captain Laserhawk, so this is interesting. I've been watching comedies from the 2000s.
Something that barely exists anymore in movies these days, I've noticed.
Right. And I've also been rewatching Entourage,
Okay. Okay.
right? Because there was like and I'll tell you why I've been rewatching Entourage, because it was more of a subconscious thing, right? Like I like randomly like last year spent a day with Adrian Grenier. We like hung out all day and then like had like a deep conversation till like night, and it was like 4 a.m. So there's that. And I'm just like, oh yeah, like let me now re-experience this show now, like kind of knowing this dude. And so that's part of it. But I think the real draw at the end of the day is there was this thing called Hollywood, that was this land of dreams. It was this dream factory. It was Tinseltown. It was it was kind of magical, kind of mythical. And through the course of the last decade, it's been hit by scandals. We've gotten a look behind the curtain. There's been shakeups. There's been an audience that's just fucking left. There's been an audience that's been kind of made unhappy over how, quote, politicized it's gotten. I'm not going to say whether, but that is just the reality of it. That's what, yeah. So they're customers who are like, I will no longer buy this product. So I've been rewatching Entourage because in a way it's a reminder of where we were, right? And mass layoffs are coming. They've already started. Laserhawk, obviously Laserhawk's done pretty well and it's a hit. And when you have a hit, executives start calling you. They call your reps. They try to set up meetings and whatnot. The amount of meetings that I've had set up, and these aren't low level executives. We're talking like the head of the company or number two. The amount of meetings that I've had set up that then suddenly get canceled because they're like, hey, everyone just got fired. So that has been crazy, right? So these layoffs are being reported in the media, but I would argue that they are, or my sense of it is that they're more extreme, and they're kind of broader than what's being even reported. And again, we go back to 80% of the content is not being watched, only 20% of it's being watched, and that 20% is getting almost 100% of the eyeballs. I feel like there's a massive culling that's in process. There's a massive culling that's in process. And, agents, managers, lawyers, studio executives, writers, directors, like, I feel like there's about to be a massive wave of people that are just kind of not pushed out of the business. There's just going to be no opportunities because there's going to be a lot less quote unquote content made. And because there's less content, there's less need for people and whatnot. So, and I don't want to assume that I'm going to be in the 20% that gets to stick around, the 20% of executives or the people, the producers, creators, such as myself, that get to stick around. I don't want to assume that I'm in the 20%, but let's hope that I am. It's on that 20% to rebuild Hollywood, to rebuild it, right? To figure out how do we capture that audience? Like, how do we actually do it? How do we become the cultural powerhouse? How do we become the thing that everyone's talking about and everyone wants to be a part of? Like, how do we do that, right? And it's almost like an apocalyptic thing of like having to rebuild society. So that's why I've been rewatching Entourage.
Okay. And I think that will do it for this interview segment. Oh, no, wait. I had one more question. That's right. I did. I have it here. Have you had in all these meetings, because Hollywood's kind of like weird and it's circular in its influences, now that Captain Laserhawk inspired you to do a reimagining in this form, has gaming come to you about doing Captain Laserhawk, your version, as a game?
I cannot answer that. It may or may not have. I can neither confirm or deny. It's the classic dodge.
No, that's okay. I have plenty of lawyers in my family, and I've hung out with plenty of gangsters in my life. That's a good answer right there from both. I may or may not know these events that you are talking about. Adi, thank you as always for sitting down with me and chatting. I love just chatting with you and kind of catching up and
Good.
Seeing things like where you are with things. So just to plug again, we have Netflix, Castlevania, Guardians of Justice, Captain Laserhawk. Big things. By the time you hear this interview, most of you will be talking about Devil May Cry stuff. So that's obviously also coming down the pike. And whoever knows what this man is cooking up, but it's always something, and it's always interesting. And you talk about just kind of getting the audience, but you seem to have been a master at it for 10 years in all kinds of ways. So it's good to talk with you again, my friend. And
always
hope you have
always
a
a
good
pleasure,
weekend.
Kofi. You too, buddy.